Ms. Schultzkamp, we'll have one more round if anybody else has questions. I do have two questions. Mr. Winnett, could you join us at the table? Mr. Winnett, on your Facebook group related to Gulf War illness, you asked how many veterans are being referred for psychiatric or psychological treatment. What kind of response are you getting?
In a word, overwhelming, sir. Can you hear me okay?
Is that on? Microphone on?
In a word, the answer to that question, Congressman, is overwhelming. I might add that yesterday we hit the milestone of 10,000 veterans. This is a closed group, and I approve every member and have so for the last 7 years. Overwhelming. And my written statement for the record includes quite a number of them, but obviously not all of them. But I took some of those that were very compelling, and I think they're self-explanatory if you read my statement as to what the prevailing attitude is about VA's treatment of Gulf War illness.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Benz, could you please come to the table? Mr. Benz, given VA's use of IOM reports in the manner we've discussed, are you aware of any requirements for such reports?
Yes, I am. The Congress ordered these IOM reports, and in the law, it specified very clearly what it wanted the IOM reports to consider. It listed 33 toxic exposures, including all the ones that have been mentioned here, and it asked whether in the medical literature there was an association between any of those toxic exposures and illness in humans or in animals. Congress did not ask whether there was data on the individual exposure levels the troops received, because it was known at the time the law was passed that that information was not available. But it did want to have the information on animals because most studies of toxic substances are done in animals. When VA contracted for these studies, however, they did not contract for considering animal studies. And the Institute of Medicine was a willing accomplice in that it removed consideration of animal studies from its standards of evidence, which it had used in the case of Agent Orange evaluations for Vietnam veterans. So the action taken was exactly the opposite of what Congress ordered. And as a result, that entire stack of reports, which you see, no IOM report has ever considered animal studies in its conclusions, and no IOM report has ever found an association between a toxic exposure and the illnesses that we're talking about today. And I want to just clarify, because there's been a lot of discussion today about how complex this is. And certainly going forward, it is complex to find treatments, but well worth the while. But what is not complex is understanding why these veterans are ill. You do not have to measure each veteran and have a monitor on them to know that. Our report, the report of the Research Advisory Committee that was done in 2008, here it is, it reaches very firm conclusions on the fact that these illnesses were caused by toxic exposures, notably the ones Dr. White mentioned, PB and pesticides. There is no dispute about that if you consider animal research, but the IOM has never considered the animal research. They talk about it. They have paragraphs on it. But when you reach the conclusions, they use a standard of evidence which excludes animal studies. Please read my submission, and you will see that in detail, that the entire IOM reports, if you read the reports, they're very clear, they're very honest. They say, we don't consider these animal studies. And we're talking about basic things here. Here's 2 pages with 23 studies of the effect of low-level sarin, such as was experienced at Camisea, that was considered by the Research Advisory Committee and has never been considered by the IOM. Dr. Corey Selecta's report on page 139 says that she didn't consider the animal studies because they were relying on earlier IOM reports. Well, if you read the earlier IOM reports, as I indicated in my written submission, they didn't consider them either. These are the basic studies that say the toxic substances are toxic. So the whole IOM series of Gulf War and health reports is a stack of cards. And the same dishonest standard is being applied to current veterans of Iraq and Afghanistan who have been exposed to burn pits. Once again, there is no consideration of the standard that Congress itself established.
Thank you, Mr. Benz.